As I've explained, the legal test which has to be applied in this case is whether there are substantial grounds for believing that asylum seekers sent to Rwanda would be at real risk of refoulement. In the light of the evidence which I have summarised, the Court of Appeal concluded that there were such grounds. We are unanimously of the view that they were entitled to reach that conclusion. Indeed, having been taken through the evidence ourselves, we agree with their conclusion. We accept the Home Secretary's submission that the Rwandan government entered into the agreement in good faith, and that the capacity of the Rwandan system to produce accurate and fair decisions can and will be built up. Nevertheless, asking ourselves whether there were substantial grounds for believing that a real risk of refoulement existed at the relevant time, we have concluded that there were. The changes needed to eliminate the risk of refoulement may be delivered in the future, but they have not been shown to be in place now. The Home Secretary's appeal is therefore dismissed. There is also a cross-appeal on behalf of one of the asylum claimants who argues that the Rwandan policy is in breach of retained EU law, as well as being unlawful for the reasons that I've already explained. We reject that argument on the basis that under an Act of Parliament enacted in 2020, the EU provisions in question ceased to have effect at the end of that year. The cross-appeal is therefore also dismissed. The Court will now adjourn.
Well, that was Lord Reid, the President of the Supreme Court, handing down that verdict. And as you're saying, that they agreed with the Court of Appeal's conclusions, and the government has basically lost. Let's bring in Helena Wilkinson, who is outside the Supreme Court and has been listening into that, and some very strong words there, Helena.
The verdict's through. It's unlawful.
Yes, so in the last few moments we've just been hearing that judgment here at the Supreme Court, 5 justices considering the government's Rwanda plan, and in the last few moments the Supreme Court here has ruled that the government's plan to send some asylum seekers to Rwanda their appeal has been dismissed. In other words, the government has lost in terms of its Rwanda plan. That's the judgment that's been handed down here at the Supreme Court in the last few moments. Lord Reid, who we were just hearing from, who handed down that judgment on behalf of the 5 justices, ruled that there were substantial grounds to believe that genuine refugees, so if they were sent to Rwanda, there were substantial grounds in the judgment here today. Lord Reid said that there were substantial grounds to believe that genuine refugees sent to the country, Rwanda, could be at risk of being returned to countries from which they fled. So that breaking news in the last few moments from the Supreme Court here, the UK's highest court. The government has lost its appeal. So that means that the Rwanda plan has been ruled unlawful, and that was what the 5 justices here endorsed an earlier Court of Appeal ruling earlier this year that again had ruled it was unlawful. What the 5 justices were looking at in particular is whether Rwanda as a country was safe for asylum seekers, and also was there a substantial risk that some asylum seekers, if they were sent from the UK to Rwanda, once they got to Rwanda, was there a substantial risk that they could be sent back to the country that they had been fleeing from and been at risk of persecution. So that judgment here in the last few moments that the government has lost its case. It had sought permission here at the Supreme Court to look again at a Court of Appeal ruling over its Rwanda plan, and the government has today lost a significant blow to the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and his new Home Secretary James Cleverly. We will expect to hear a statement at some point from the government after this judgment has been handed down. Don't forget, we've got Prime Minister's questions as well fairly shortly at lunchtime at midday. But a significant defeat for the government in that it has lost here at the Supreme Court, which means that the Rwanda plan that it announced more than 18 months ago, that has been ruled unlawful by 5 justices here at the Supreme Court.